Hey, what is up you guys? My name is Catherine and welcome back to Throwback Thanksgiving week. So if this is your first time clicking onto my channel this week or ever, welcome. This week I am posting a new video every single day doing an eyeshadow tutorial with a throwback eyeshadow palette. So I'm going to be making a playlist of this event, so if you missed the other videos, make sure you check that out as well. Today is drugstore day and I'm actually going to be doing two palettes today, so it's twice the fun. The two palettes that I'm going to be using are the e.l.f. Mad for Matte eyeshadow palette. This is the second edition, the Holy Smokes edition, and then I'm going to also be using the original Wet n Wild Comfort Zone palette. So this palette is an all matte eyeshadow palette and this palette is an all shimmer eyeshadow palette. And while I'm not opposed to doing all matte or all shimmer eyeshadow looks, neither are really my favorite. I'm definitely someone that likes to do a combination of matte and shimmer shadows on the eyelid, and I just feel like these two palettes go together so nicely. I actually am only using one shade from the Wet n Wild palette. I'm using that super popular blue brown shade. So the e.l.f. palette retails for $10 and you get 10 shades in here. This one came out in August of 2017. And there are a bunch of other palettes in this Mad for Matte series as well. I think it's like 4 or 5, but I don't really know. I sort of lost count. And then the Comfort Zone palette, I genuinely have no clue when it came out. I remember seeing this at the drugstore when I was way little, and they did recently reformulate these palettes. As of now, the palettes retail for $5. I remember back in the day, I'm pretty sure this one was like $3 at a CVS, but don't quote me on that, I was very little. So I believe that is everything for the intro of this video. If you are new here, definitely don't forget to subscribe. I'm here every day this week, and then I'm typically here on Wednesdays and Sundays. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you love using your old eyeshadow palettes, because I do. It's so fun to me. And let's get started with the tutorial. Alright, so I have my eyebrows done. I don't have any other makeup on. I put my Milani eyeshadow primer on and I did not set it. I find that e.l.f. eyeshadows work better when you don't set the eyelid down. So I am starting out with the e.l.f. Mad for Matte Holy Smokes. I'm going to be starting out with this lightest brown shade that is in the palette. It is 3 from the left as you are looking at the palette. These do not have names. And I'm going into that shade on a BH Cosmetics number 11 brush, not a Studio Pro, just a standard brush line. I don't think they make this brush line anymore. And this is the transition shade that I'm going to be using today. It is barely even darker than my skin tone, which makes it the perfect transition shade. So I just swept that on sort of messily. It doesn't really matter since you can barely see it. And then next I'm going into this second lightest brown shade. Like, you can barely see a difference between these two, but it's just a little bit darker and a little bit more cool toned and less yellow toned. So I'm going into that on an AOA Studio E127 brush. This is a very round, very fluffy brush with just a little bit of a taper to it. And I'm also swirling that around very lightly and tapping the excess shadows off. So I'm working to be a little bit more precise with this one. I'm using very light swirling motions as I bring this shadow across my crease, and I'm holding my brush by the end so that I'm not pressing too hard with this shadow at all. Alright, so it's still rather light, but there's just a bit more definition to the eye now. Now I'm going into a ColourPop E2 brush, and I'm going into this darkest brown shade in the palette very lightly. You don't want this to get too dark too quickly. So I'm going to be using sort of the same motions, but this shade is only going to be coming out to about halfway across my crease. I don't want this dark color to be taken all the way across my crease. And then once you have your crease deepened up even more, you're going to take that same brown shade and that same brush, and I'm just going to bring that shade down a little bit so it is on the outermost portion of the lid as well. Alright, now is where we start to get a little bit more fun and colorful and really start to deepen things up. So I'm going to be going into this matte hunter green shade. Everything in this palette is matte. Going into this hunter green shade in the palette on a BH Cosmetics Studio Pro 17. It's a very great brush for detail work. It still has a little bit of roundness and fluffiness, but it's smaller and more dense. So I'm taking that shade and that's going into the outer half of the lid. I'm sort of doing little swirling motions but also tapping as I place it down, if that makes any kind of sense. I really just want to build this color up. I want it to have a bit of an intensity to it, but I want it to blend very, very seamlessly into the crease. And then just to make sure this is very, very blended out, I'm going back into that ColourPop brush and that darkest brown shade, and I'm just tapping that across those edges. Now is where we are going to be going into the Wet n Wild palette. I'm going to be using the cult favorite blue brown shade, and I'm going into that on this Alamar Cosmetics brush. It is your typical flat shader brush. It's a bit smaller than the one, say, from the Naked palette, so I very, very much like it for packing on shimmer shades. And I want this shade to be very, very intense, and I find that these shades that have sort of a shift to them perform better wet. So I am going to be wetting my brush with the Heritage Store Rose Water and Glycerin. This is my favorite spray. Alright, so this is going to be going on the lid, both on this spot where there is no eyeshadow left, and then I'm going to be pulling it all the way over. So it's going to be overlapping with that green a little bit. Going to come out sort of to the outer edge of my iris. So you can see that layered over this darker green shade, it sort of creates an entire new eyeshadow shade. It's this very pretty deep green shimmer that looks quite different from the inner part of the lid that still has that sort of blue-brown reflect to it. And I just want to deepen up the outer corner the slightest bit more. So on that BH Cosmetics number 17 brush, I'm going back into that green shade, and I'm just doing one dip into this dark black shade as well. So this is it for the top lid. I'm going to go do some face makeup. We actually did not get a lot of fallout with these at all, which I was planning for. And I will probably throw on some liner, maybe some lashes if I can find any. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, I am back. I'm going to be super boring with my under eye because I just don't think colorful and cool toned under eyes are flattering on me. I'm going to go back into that darkest brown shade on an AOA Studio E115. This is just a flat eyeliner brush. And I'm going to drop the palette, and then I'm going to line my under eye with that shade. And then to smoke that out, I'm going to go into this e.l.f. blending brush with no label. I'm going back into that lightest shade that we used for the original transition shade. I feel like the top isn't really meshing with the bottom super well, so So I'm going to go in with just the teeniest bit of that green on the same brush I used earlier, and I'm just like dabbing that into the outermost part of the under eye. I feel like the look really needs just a little bit of pop on the inner eye, so I'm going to be taking Crushed Pearl from my Anastasia Beverly Hills highlighting palette, and I'm just putting a little bit of that on the inner eye to just sort of open things up. And I'm going to do just some mascara on my under eye. And this is the final look. It's a very sultry, smoky green eye. I love it. I just absolutely love green eyeshadows, and I really like how this one turned out. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss tomorrow's throwback tutorial as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.